Call to order the Wheeling Plan Commission Special Workshop discussion for Thursday, August 16th, 2012. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Burns.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Bonham here. Commissioner Dorban.
Here.
Commissioner Stylen.
Here.
Commissioner Scheff.
Here.
And Chairman Maloney.
Here. Mr. Jennings, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes this evening.
We have citizens' concerns and comment. We have one citizen here. Do you have any comments or concerns? In that case, we'll get rid of that. There are no consent items, no items for review. We're into workshop regarding streetscape subcommittee recommendations for landscaping. Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. So what we've prepared tonight, based on the discussion from last week, is a few pieces of, a few updates on the three items that came up from last week. That's the top three there: appearance award program, application review, and landscaping section of the zoning code. The fourth is sort of an offshoot of the other business discussion we had last week, which is workshops in general, how to prep for them. And I have prepared a little bit additional discussion on that, having had some experience now for a week with this. I'd like to give some feedback on it and just suggest a procedure for the coming months. The first thing we took a look at was a appearance award program. We tried to find examples of municipal monetary awards for outstanding appearance. This would be, as we talked about last week, something to supplement the facade grant program, whereas the facade grant program has some limitations in that a single business could receive a monetary grant award. A competitive award program might encourage 3 or 4 businesses to compete for a smaller dollar amount, and you end up with a larger number of properties being improved. It goes along with the items we discussed last week, some sort of prestige, a yard sign, a plaque of some sort to hang in the lobby. This would be a program that could be recommended to the board at the end of this discussion. We would take whatever information we can find, compile it, and recommend it as a potential program to the board. So to this point, here's what we've found. We could not find a concrete example of a municipality with a program like this, which led us to the preliminary guess that maybe there's a reason that people don't do this, perhaps a legal reason that people cannot give money out. So we're looking around, we're just starting this. So there's a possibility that this may not be possible the way that we had talked about it. The ones that we did find seem to be based in non-municipal organizations, so a business improvement district, a downtown alliance, that sort of thing will have an award. Most of the awards that we found, though, were prestige only and not monetary. So a plaque of some sort of yard sign recognition. So given what we found so far, I think we need a determination on what the law is. Is there a reason, as we are suspecting, that other municipalities aren't doing this? And if there are limitations, let's try to craft something within those limitations. Are there any questions on this one?
Didn't Wheeling have a program like this at one time? I don't know if it was monetary.
I think that may be the difference. We've done awards. I don't know if we've done a round since you've been on the commission, but we've done.
No, but I somewhere in our building, I have a certificate
Right.
from many, many years ago.
We've done signage, we've done general
Appearance?
appearance, but it's been based on a specific improvement. So if there's been a sign within the last few years or a recent landscape change within the last few years, that's how it's been done. But I think it's always been prestige, certificate, and nothing of cash value. And so there may be a reason that the facade improvement grant is how we've been doing this. You know, you apply up front rather than having an award after the fact. So that's what we would suggest at this point, is follow up on the research, but try to figure out, contact the municipalities that have something similar without a monetary value attached to it, and find out maybe from them or from our attorneys if there's some reason this is what we're finding. Any other questions on this one?
Andrew?
Yes.
Is the facade improvement program seems to cover a lot of strange incidentals. Is it possible that landscaping could be an incidental that we refund a certain percentage of the costs to improve the landscaping in a certain area?
We've had, just off the top of my head, we've probably had 4 or 5 of those grants that we've processed have had a landscaping component to them. We've cut it from, in some cases, we've cut that. The facade grant committee has cut that in our recommendation because of the nature of what was proposed. If we felt that it was maintenance of something that was existing, we didn't feel that it, trimming trees, we didn't feel was a added value. We felt that was a maintenance responsibility. So I don't think the commission often sees the cost breakdown on the facade grants, but they do have, and we have had several that were had a landscaping component to them.
I have a hard time justifying giving an award, monetary award to someone that got a monetary award from us for doing it in the first place.
That is, if we move forward, that's going to be the question is, eligibility. If somebody received village payment to make the installation, should they be ineligible for an award for it after the fact? One or the other, I think there's a handful of questions. I think first and foremost is, are we allowed to do it? All that becomes somewhat.
I guess from my perspective, I would like us to go down the path of our appearance awards being non-monetary, but being consistent. We have them every couple of years, and we're not very consistent with that. And I think if we could build that program up so our community can see that, be it retail, commercial, whatever, that then there might be some pride being put into that. Now, what that does, and as I'm thinking about this, what we've always done in the past is we've put the burden on staff to do that. So why don't we have a subcommittee, 1 or 2 people, you have to have more than one to have a subcommittee, but 2 or 3 people on the plan commission be that appearance award program. And they solicit, the rest of the plan commission. They put together the presentation that you guys do. They do the voting, and then we turn it over to you to get the awards. To me, because it seems to me that it's always been the burden of staff to do that. And, there's village things that not necessarily more important, but yeah, they are. So why don't we put that on the plan commission to do that, organize the program and run with it?
I think regardless of how we proceed on the monetary aspect of it, if there's a plaque that can move from location to location, or a yard sign, something that is more regular, annual, semi-annual.
Right.
I think that would be a great idea for the
I know we've talked about it since I've been on the board, and we haven't done it in
No.
a couple of years.
I think another one of the benefits, Jim, of doing something like that is, especially if we did it every year up front, you now have some samples to show petitioners of things that we thought were extraordinary,
So, yeah, I mean,
first
we,
class.
yeah, we did signs, and we used to do signs and appearance. If we stagger them, so they don't all come at the same time, every 6 months have an award, so it's every year for appearance and every year for signs, we can collect them and we can be a little bit more diligent there, and then we move forward instead of really, if you haven't found any municipality that does cash awards by now, I don't think there's any out there. And in reality, in the budget times that we're at, to me, this would be something that would be frivolous. Even if it's a couple $100.
Yeah, for a couple $100, you're not going to have somebody spend $10,000 to improve their landscaping.
And I think what we could look into is how to coordinate a prominent display. We could, they have thin glass cabinets. We could find perhaps a place either in our office, in the community development conference room. There may be a place around here that's appropriate for a display of something, like a
Or we've-
photograph and a.
We've got the internet.
Sure.
We've got our webpage, we've got all the channels that we're on, Comcast, Uverse, whatever, we can put things there and rotate them through.
I wouldn't cost very much.
No, exactly,
Get a picture on the sign out front.
right. Well, yeah,
Okay. Any other
Andrew,
suggestions
would
on
you
this?
send us these slides when you,
These slides? Sure. Any other questions on this one? So application review, we had part of the discussion last week centered on the materials that are included in our applications. In particular, I think there was the discussion of the landscape plan samples in the sign application. So in front of you is a copy of that section of the sign application. The first point on here is not going to make a whole lot of sense right now, but it relates to some of what I plan on talking about in a few minutes. But
no, I don't.
the idea here is, this is, Commissioner Raffato, this is the one I didn't have an extra copy.
Oh, okay, I was just, you gave me stuff, okay, that's fine.
So the idea is there may be a way to just take this out of the application as we're talking about the possibility of a color brochure or a graphic illustrative guide to the landscaping. One concept that Brooke and I have talked about is adding an appendix to the zoning code that is that guide. We've got a bicycle parking guide, we've got a appendix that is our use table, we've got a guide to the legislative history of multifamily developments. There's no reason we can't add an appendix to cover this and then refer back to it in other documents. We could refer to it in the sign code, say C zoning code, appendix D for these samples. We could refer to it other places. So the request that we had is to consider updating, modernizing the graphics that are in the sign code. That it would include the illustrations of our signs. Some of these may be obsolete because we've changed the sign code regulations. Maybe some of these wall signs should reflect, rather than illustrating something that's obvious in the text of the code, maybe our illustration should be something that's more confusing in the text of the code. So we're not there yet in terms of actually having a graphic to show you, but I think this is the direction we're going, is take a look at the code, take a look at the application, and do our graphics illustrate for applicants, one, what the requirements are, and two, how the application materials should be presented to the commission. One thing that might make this more useful is also having putting this very obviously in our digital application, attaching it to our application online, which is where a lot of our applicants are getting our materials now. It doesn't cost us anything to print. It'd be very user-friendly. And just take it out of the main application. So the application just becomes a form that says examples available online. And that's, to date, that's what we've looked at.
It's a great idea.
Any questions on this? Sure.
Yeah, the application form that you're talking about, I believe is probably this one, the sign permit, in which case it's got a number of prerequisite pages, and then the last 3 or 4 are the ones that you gave us. I really think it's nice keeping the whole packet together rather than having a separate handout, whatever. I think you said there are a couple other handouts that you have or are available. I would just think that if somebody's coming in and going to fill out this, 3 or 4 or 5 page application form, that they would pay attention to the examples that are given on the last couple pages. If we put the examples off in some other place that isn't convenient to see when they're filling out the application, then they might not see it. That's just my personal belief. Have you all seen the application permit? It's on page 121 of our...
What he was saying was to put the brochure attached to that on the website, so they'd have it.
Well, when you say attached, does that mean internal to the application
At the end.
itself, like it is today?
They are at the end.
Yeah, as long as when they
You
open up
download it,
that,
you get that also.
when they open the PDF, it's in the same...
Sure, I think what I was getting at is if we're going toward a very detailed color sample of landscaping, breaking it down, kind of how we talked about last week, by shade, sun, it's going to be way more than we can reproduce. It's going to be probably 20, 30 pages of material. So having some element of that where we just refer to the graphic appendix for additional information, please see Appendix D of the zoning code. But then we could probably pull out a couple of key illustrations, do a sample landscape plan. Here is a signed landscaping plan, or 2 or 3, in the range, the 200 square foot size versus the 600 square foot size of landscape area. A shady one, maybe, I think that we could probably keep with the application, but the whole big appendix, I think, is just going to be too big to do anything other than just refer to it. At least my understanding of what the commission was requesting on that. So we can kind of...
Originally, Andrew, we were talking about a little brochure to hand out. That's how it started. So if you've already got it somewhere else in the code, you should be able to link it right to that. So if someone prints out the application, you can automatically pull that with it.
Yes. Yes, we just need to try to figure out we have some experience with petitioners not reading anything that we give them. So if we print things out, we can print out very detailed instructions of what to do, and then people call us and say, what do I do?
Getting back to trying to regulate stupid.
Right. So we got to balance that with, try to provide
If
a
you
really
link it, it
user-friendly.
costs us nothing. It costs
Right.
them.
We do it once and it's done.
Hey,
We do
right.
it once and it's done, so. So that's kind of where we are. Are there any questions on this one?
Well, it depends. I guess one of the questions that I would have when somebody does go into the sign permit application document, right, there's a number of items with probably 3 or 4 sub-items and places for check marks and stuff on the page. When an applicant fills this form out, do they follow all these, this stuff is required, this stuff is required, this stuff is required?
I would say it's about 50-50. Some of these, if you're talking about the sign code specifically, the sign application process.
The sign permit application, yeah.
I'd say probably on the sign permit application, most people follow most of it. We still get people calling us. The bond has been confusing. It's on there, it's described. We still get people calling and they're surprised by it when we point out later on, you still don't have your bond. Anything that is slightly unusual, they have a pattern. A lot of sign companies have a pattern of application and permit review that they follow from town to town. So anything that varies from that, it doesn't matter that it's written down. They just don't read it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Alrighty, so I mean, even if we put in special landscaping stuff for check boxes or whatever, they could ignore it.
They can ignore it to some extent. I mean, if it's a requirement for review, we will catch it when they apply, and we'll delay them and say you have missed a requirement. If they've just done if it's something that's required for later in the process, the payment, for example, we don't require payment on a sign permit until you're ready to pick up the permit. So the application itself has no fee. So everything that's associated with actually getting your permit comes after the Plan Commission reviews it. And so sometimes people take a long time between appearance approval and installation because they don't have all of their ducks in a row for that aspect of the application.
I don't know if we're going to go into more detail on landscaping, but we had thought about designating percentages and mixtures of materials and stuff. Are we going to talk about those concepts in any detail tonight, or?
Not in much detail. The last thing that I plan on talking about is sort of getting to that. So I'll probably cover it when we get there in terms of how to proceed from this point in preparation for the upcoming workshops.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one?
Are we still requiring them to submit 15 copies?
No.
Okay.
No, we're.
So we just need to update that piece of it.
Right, and we tell everybody as we, there's almost no one who submits an application without talking to us, and we tell all of them, this is a digital submittal. We don't require any copies at this point.
And just so you know, the first one says submit the application to S. Robinson. Maybe we should go through and update the whole permit a little bit, so.
I think we certainly have other contact information on different versions of our permits. So the next item that we prepared gets into the transition into the project of updating the landscaping requirements, how we illustrate them, how we convey them to the public, to petitioners, to developers. I mentioned this last week, but I printed it up so you can see what I was talking about. I got 2 sections of the code in front of you. One is 1911-020, which is the landscape and buffer yard requirement. The other one is 1911 010, which is a segment in the parking, the off-street parking and loading. So it's a little bit scattered. A lot of our landscaping is parking lot related. The landscape and buffer yard section is in a entirely different, do I have those code sections right? You're looking at the code. Let me see what
No. Yes, well,
the inside.
you've got, I've got 1911.01, 19.11.010.
And then the other one's 1911-02, yes, that's right. So taking a look at the landscape and buffer yard, the code language is a little bit difficult to follow. I think this is one of the items that the Streetscape Subcommittee had worked on with the village foresters, trying to replace this. I don't know if you were looking specifically at this section or just looking at the idea of having a percentage-based requirement. So we have some percentage-based requirements, but these are, in my opinion, fairly difficult to follow. This can be resolved by taking these two sections out or stripping them down to a reference to a graphic appendix, and having a simpler requirement that's easier for petitioners to follow, easier for us to compare to the code as well. If you look at the parking lot landscaping section, one of the items that I pointed out here on the slide is that there have been some interpretations, both with sign landscaping and parking lot landscaping, of relating to evergreen and screening and winter interest. And some of these interpretations aren't really reflected in the code. The commission has discussed specific planting styles that if you just read the code, you would not understand. The decorative grasses, for example, have been found to be winter interest. They're certainly not evergreen. So there's a few things like that we're just missing that we can tell petitioners when they come in, but if they were to just read the code, they wouldn't get it. The other thing that I think the Public Works Department has, through the Village Forester, conveyed to the Streetscape Subcommittee is that the way we're writing it right now and what we're doing doesn't necessarily reflect best practices in landscaping. I guess the best way to describe that is that we're, the way the code reads right now encourages an immediate impact over the long-term success of the planting area. And there may be some way to mix the two so that you get a decent immediate impact, but also have a more sustainable.
Could you give an example of what you just said?
Density of plants, size of plant at planting. Some of our trees and shrubs, we have a tendency to, if you take the requirements literally, put them closer together than a landscaper would recommend for allowing for 2 years growth of the roots, that sort of thing. So while it may look nice, we may be setting ourselves up for the landscaping to be more difficult for somebody to maintain 2 years down the road. So I think having the village forester help us to come up with a better way to phrase these so that you get, there are plants that you can plant closer together because of the way their roots work. I'm not an expert, but I would like to hear from one to make sure that our code is doing that. And that's when we transition to this graphic appendix, those are the types of changes we can make, is balancing immediate impact, immediate visual impact with giving a petitioner the best likelihood of long-term success.
So besides the forester, who else are you using? I mean, are you going to like the APA, or are you going to, I don't know.
Which APA?
I mean, the American Planners Association, whatever that is. You know,
Psychiatric.
yeah, psychiatric, that's true.
Pilot Association.
Is it, it may be AAP, it's AAP.
We're APA. I haven't yet, I certainly could. I think, and this is what I'm going to touch on in the next part of the workshop discussion here is, compiling information, putting together some of the best practices so that you have a few things to look at. Maybe take a sample code, maybe there's a model landscape ordinance out there. A lot of times, an organization like the APA has a model ordinance.
Right.
And municipalities can pull from it. Sustainability in terms of plants thriving and also being compatible with the environment. In this area, there are certain plants that do better. Sometimes we will see a landscape plan with an unusual plant on it, and it's unusual for a reason. It's not meant to be here. So trying to get a better handle on what would thrive here, I think, is also part of that.
Or
we can-
are you going to attempt to pick the brain of some of the, landscape architects that come in here that we've dealt with in a long time? I would assume that the Park District is using landscape architects and, just, hey,
That's a good suggestion. I think we can talk to the Park District. We've had some landscape architects that have done a particularly good job of presenting their designs to the commission and the board.
yeah, because I've got to assume that, if the common, if I would try to interpret this, I would have a hard time interpreting this. So even if you go to a landscape architect and from the standpoint not only of plantings and sustainability, but interpretation of, our code to say, is this easy for you
To understand.
to understand?
You're a design professional.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think, to me, that's probably one of the most important things is to put it in terms that's easy for them to understand.
Right, yeah.
And I think this is a perfect time to do this. We're making a transition to having this graphic appendix,
Right.
color brochure, possibly as a spin-off of that graphic appendix. We might as well, while we're doing that, make the transition to a better code.
I mean, you think about the owners of the new Phillips 66. They came in here the first time without really much, in their pocket as far as landscape goes. And maybe they didn't read this, or maybe they attempted to read and didn't understand it and just threw some, some X's here, here, and here. So, and I'm not saying it's got to go to, my simple level of, so I could plan something for a space like that, but somebody that's in the business, they're in a business that they want to make it nice, not, that place, they probably wanted to make it nice, but maybe they couldn't interpret this, So twofold. One, do we have the right plans in place for, as you say, sustainability, and then also interpretation of the plan, of the ordinance. And I guess that's true of any of them. You think about, and I'm getting way off, but if somebody wants to build an addition or in their house, could they, now granted, who would know, to go to the code first, but is the code simple enough for them to say, it's got to be this off the lot line or this off the lot line, or is it, just simple for them? So taking that to the landscape, maybe we can do that too. Start and not reinvent all the code, but as we go through these things, maybe that's something we look at too. Is it easy to understand for the layperson?
If it's difficult to understand and difficult to interpret, both from their perspective and our perspective, it loses some value
Right.
for sure. And I think that, in the end, what you have is not really doing anybody any good. It's not conveying the desires of the village. It's not promoting the aesthetic growth that you want. So I think that we're, just by identifying this as an issue to address, I think we're a step closer to doing a better job.
Good.
Andrew,
Yes.
before we leave, I think, Jim, you brought up two terms. One was sustainability and another one was, it was a real good, it was a real good term. Led me to another objective of maintainability. Now, maintainability items for landscaping are listed out in Title 11. Is there any chance that we could move some of that Title 11 stuff into this whole,
Are you referring to 12?
is it title?
Trees, vegetation, et cetera?
Yeah, yeah.
We had, a few years ago, an overhaul of 12 in the works and ended up with an underhaul. We did a smaller revision of it. We can take a look at the overlap of 12 with 19 and see what the best way is to proceed. I have to look at the code and see where 12 comes from in terms of authority and responsibility. I don't know if it's a building code related, I just don't know. I do know that it was the commission that looked at it last, back about 7 years ago. But yeah, maybe there's an opportunity to, rather than have it be Appendix D of the zoning code, maybe it's Title 12 instead.
Or at least have a pointer over to a maintainability section in some other title area.
Good idea.
Because I think in some cases, I'm not sure that petitioners know that after they plant a specific landscaping plan, that their responsibility is to maintain that plan until it's replaced by another plan. So a lot of times the plants die, the trees die, we'll throw in something else. We used to have this kind of bushes, we'll just replace it with barberries or something, and,
I think that's one of the other, that kind of leads to one of the other questions that we've had somewhat recently is some of the better landscaped areas, the ones that we had the photographs of last week, were seasonal. And conveying a seasonal planting on a plan, well, is it just a flex space? It says this area reserved for seasonal planting. You've got tulips, you've got petunias, you've got mums. So places that have I think we gave the example of large residential complexes have a entrance area that they focus their effort into. It's a whole lot of people combined to pay for a small area can pay for 4 rounds of planting a year. How do you encourage or convey something like that? Because I think everybody has agreed, on the commission at least, that those types of things should be encouraged. The really impressive seasonal planting should be encouraged. So,
well, I think that one of our belief, or at least the subcommittee's belief, was, and I believe that's why we separated it up into 3 areas, right? That you maybe might be able to mandate certain changes of seasonal plants in highly trafficked areas, but other areas that are less traveled, whatever, on the inside, you might just let go with, it's not annual, it's
perennial. Something really
plants.
hardy that requires almost no maintenance.
Exactly, but the question is, can we mandate, that 10% of their plantings or 20% or some percentage has to be of the annual seasonal variety. Is that something that can be done for, the major thoroughfares of the village?
I've had limited conversations with the village forester on this, and I think what we need to figure out how to do is figure out the end goal. Do percentages get you there? Do they create something that's too complicated to enforce? Do you use it as a guide? How do you regulate it, and how do you write that regulation in such a way that you actually achieve what it is you want? Maybe the way you achieve what you want is by allowing the easier to maintain hardy perennials, and then have some sort of something that incentivizes the others. I think we need to look at a couple of different codes and see what people are doing on this.
I think most companies that I know that are very successful in very prominent locations, have a staff of landscapers that change their plantings 3 or 4 times a year and stuff. I don't know that we have that kind of great success in town, but maybe we do. Maybe we should consider challenging, those on the major thoroughfares to extend a little bit further their landscaping rather than just planting stuff and letting it go for 20, 25 years like the Phillips Station did.
One of the interesting things that Ms. Jones and I observed while we were driving around is, some of the places that are approved in the last couple of years, we found were not doing particularly well. We drove by a vacant restaurant that hasn't been touched by any human hand in a season or two, and it looked really nice. And it was hardy perennials that are meant for this area. And it was they had some weeds in the lawn, but the landscape bed is in pretty good shape considering it had not been touched. It hadn't been, nobody had been over there in the fall and raked it out. Nobody came in the spring and chopped things down, and nobody's mulching it. But it looked fine. So trying to balance, maintainability, I think is going to be part of what we do here.
Well, I think one of the things that the subcommittee was looking for was to try and infuse a little more color into our landscaping, which the annuals tend to promote that as opposed to the perennials. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let me just insert that I'm a little wary on mandating some things. And it's kind of a fine line, especially in the economic situation today. We've got businesses all over town, either out of business or just barely making it. And if we try to impose something too expensive on them, it's not in their best interest or ours in the long run either. So there's a fine line there.
Moving on to the next one, or we?
Well, it's a real fine line, because we talk about the beautification of our village, and that's part of it. So we mandate through ordinances of keeping things neat and as Commissioner Steinle said, they've got a landscape plan that they should follow. And I don't think the plans that we have approved are anything that's outlandish. It's just then after that, maintaining them. And, the code is that they have to maintain them, so.
There
But
may-
I think that was the fine line I'm talking about. Where do you stop? So that we don't impose something that's too expensive on someone and still keeping the appearances up and all.
Right.
That's always
Just
bothered
off-
me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm done.
Just off the top of my head, there may be some way to combine this effort with the other one we were just talking about. You know, you've got a facade improvement grant program that has restrictions, and maybe we look at those restrictions. If somebody can't be eligible for the program twice, maybe you rewrite that so that the landscaping, you rewrite the treatment on landscaping so that if somebody wants to apply for landscaping improvement that encourages easily maintained but attractive landscaping, and they've already gone through the facade program, make them eligible for a second bite at the apple if it's street frontage beautification. You know, maybe there's some other way to encourage instead of require. On to the next one. So workshop preparation, we've had now a week to kind of reflect on this. I've had some discussions with the manager's office and the community development director to try to figure out how best to prepare workshop discussions, how to get the best use of the commission time and the staff time. And taking all the comments that we had last week and trying to figure out how do we achieve the goals that I think I heard as the consensus of the commission last week. So building off of what we talked about last week, I had a couple of thoughts. And what I would suggest, partially based on the difficulty we had this week in trying to prepare a good, meaningful discussion in however many days we had. How do we best proceed with this? So here's what I would suggest. If we have, last week we had a list of 10, 11, 12 potential topics. If we were to take, if the commission were to have one or two priority projects, the example for the purpose of this discussion would be the landscaping appendix, and perhaps that the award program, a couple of example projects. The commission could say, look, these are the two things we'd like to work on. The planning staff could then summarize the commission's idea. Take the concept to the manager's office, explain what it is the commission is preparing to work on with the staff assistants, and the manager can compare that to, using the example of landscaping, interdepartmental coordination with Public Works, and coordination with the board's strategic objectives that have been discussed. Make sure everybody's on the same page, proceed with it. Then staff researches and prepares that particular workshop. So those two we're kind of working on in an ongoing basis. And what we would have is a discussion ready to go whenever it's needed. We've got one. We've got slides. We've got images. We've got research. We've had this defined task, and we've done what we can to put materials in front of the commission to help the commission make some good recommendations. What we would do then, when we come up to a situation where we've got a meeting that looks like we're going to cancel it for lack of a petitioner item, we pull it out and say, we've got this, this particular discussion is prepared, it's ready to go. We put it on the agenda rather than canceling. And the reason I was suggesting 2 projects is that one may be stalled. You know, we're looking for our attorneys to help us understand the awards program from a legal side. We've done some work on the landscaping appendix. We're ready to go on that. We've got a decent amount of material ready. That's the one that we pull out and say, here, this one's ready to go next week. The regular Plan Commission agenda, having other business at the end, still there for requests, comments, et cetera, status updates on anything that we're working on. And I think that I just covered this example. So that's what we suggest. I think we, using this week as an example, to put together materials that are meaningful for the commission does take some effort, and we've got a regular schedule of deadlines combined with those surprises, and in order to do a really good job, I think that this achieves the goal of the commission, but also lets us prepare good quality work for you to take a look at. So any?
Andrew, one question. The old Appearance Commission, is there any files left from that?
Yes.
Are there any recommendations or anything that they had in there, or anything that might help us?
On workshop management?
Well, on what we're talking about, appearance here, you know, landscaping and so on. Or is it so long it's outdated?
It could be. I've got it. It's actually sitting on my desk right now. I can take it out. A lot of what that was converted into a policy document. We were talking a couple months ago about the Plan Commission policies and adopting them. We found in that search a series of policy documents, some of which are the Appearance Commission policies that were transferred to the commission when that was done. So it exists. It's a little dated, but I don't recall it being particularly helpful for this.
Okay.
I can get it back out. It's sitting right on my desk right now.
And a lot of the other requirements have been codified in terms of what kind of building materials, siding materials, colors and stuff have all been codified now as opposed to being arbitrary things in the past.
So there's this, I felt when I was going through this that this concept of having parallel track workshop topics achieved what the commission is looking for in terms of making sort of continuous steps toward addressing items either in the comprehensive plan or items in the code or items of policy program nature. Is the general consensus that something like this is worth trying for the next few months and see how we do?
Could you go back to the previous slide?
I think so.
Yeah, I would rather proceed at a more structured thing so we don't just
Okay, so go back.
jumping around.
If you go back in one more. Okay, define 1 and 2 projects. So starting right there, do we right now have 1 or 2 projects in the hopper?
I think so. I mean, I think we've got 2 for sure. Keep in mind that we also, aside from whatever the commission would like to work on, we also have the active transportation plan
Right.
is there with overlap with many of the things the commission does. We've got the Southeast TIF District redevelopment plan, same thing. This would be in addition to those.
And so what are those? What are those projects?
Right now, I would define that as the Appearance Award. The top 2 are the Appearance Award and the landscape requirements.
Okay.
we can always get out the list that we talked about last week and see if there's one that strikes people as better.
Well, one that just strikes me as better, and Commissioner Dorband has been asking for it for a long time, and I think Commissioner Burns has, is a review of our comprehensive plan. We've talked about it, and I think that could be a workshop item that, that could be planned and put before us on one of the workshop meetings, without a doubt.
And Jim, I'd even suggest that we don't have to talk about new items or changed items, but if we just went back and reviewed with all the commissioners the current status, what's in there, what the objectives were, because there's a lot of things that aren't written in the plan that you have and Pam has and I have, because we participated in that process, that we might be able to inform the commission on some.
So, okay, so if you could give me an example of that, because that one I'm lost on. Just, so are you talking about taking the plan, our comp plan, and breaking it up and discussing each
designated area?
Each designated area.
That's what we started to do.
And it doesn't have to be just that, the southern TIF, because we're going to do something in that area, but let's, take the Wolf Road.
Oh, no, when I say the comp plan, I mean the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm not.
But we don't have to recommend changes or anything, just review it and.
Well, yeah, I think that's what Commissioner Burns wanted, was a
Two-stepper.
Yeah, it's a two-stepper, a
Let's find out
review.
what's in it.
Yeah.
And then talk about what.
Yeah, understand what's in it and then go from there, yes. Yeah.
Speaking of which, when might the Southeast TIF thing come, that we get something on that?
Well, the Southeast TIF, last discussions we had was there are a couple of policy questions on it to inform the land use alternatives. So there's, 4 or 5 ideas of land use alternatives. I think the idea right now is to have the board give the consultant a policy direction, just to take a look at those, and then they can take that direction to work on their land use alternatives and come back. I think
Consultants haven't done anything
September.
yet.
No, they've done it. We met with them this week and went over it. They are projected right now to go to the board in September, and then to the commission, assuming that no major overhaul is needed after that, come to the commission for the real lengthier discussion, probably early October.
When do you expect the town center to come before us?
They have a requirement to come for full approval before the end of this year.
Are they going to come to us in a workshop before that?
They are required to, so they would need 2 meetings.
We don't have any idea when.
I don't have a schedule for them yet.
Well, back to this, I think this would work.
Yeah.
I personally think.
It's a managed way of doing it.
Right, and I think to person here is, we do want structure, and we do want, considering you just had a week to do this, putting all this together was really good, so, and I understand that you've got a schedule, that you have certain things to do, and that's fine. Yeah. As long as it's got form and structure, I'll be here for all of them.
Any other comments? Move on. We don't have any minutes of approval.
Do not.
Other business? Start with Mr. Schaff.
I have nothing, thank you.
Oops, all right.
Mr. Stylen.
Any comments from anybody on my suggestion to get involved with the street light design project, Andrew?
That project went to the Northwest Council of Mayors this morning, so it was, for the first time, officially added to their, trying to remember what all the acronyms mean, their Surface Transportation Program multi-year budget, or their multi-year project list, because it's our budget. So it got the thumbs up from the board in terms of budgeting for the local match, the last board meeting, and then it got the Northwest Council of Mayors approval today. I have the concept drawing request to Public Works. I asked Public Works for the fixture concept and the details regarding mounting capability. This morning, I sent that request in. So I'm trying to get that spec sheet and ask what, if anything, can be, the nature of the grant being the LED is going to define somewhat can be done. So I'm learning about it myself right now. This is out of capital improvements and not within planning. So I'm trying to get that information now.
But I mean, we had some good examples of street lighting, I think, that were done. One was in Huntley, was it? Another one was somewhere just south of what, maybe Cary, or, do you remember? I can't remember.
Huntley one I remember, but that's all I remember.
You know, that had some interesting designs, especially for pedestrian-oriented ways. And, you know, I think we should, if we're serious about doing the town center design with extra wide sidewalks and stuff, we have to prepare for that implementation, and would really like to see, you know, that, what we call those little lights down towards the pedestrian-oriented
Right.
lights.
I think there was another set of lighting that was really good. Was it Elk Grove Village, I think, had some interesting lighting too? I can't remember now.
Looks like you got the spleens on here, Warrenville and Huntley.
Yeah, I don't think Des Plaines was for some other sidewalk issues, but,
But you know, I think we do, if we're going to encourage the pedestrian piece of it, then we need to look at the pedestrian lighting as well. I mean, I don't think we can just say, okay, we're going to do overhead lighting without at least looking into, down the road, being able to have the advantage of adding that pedestrian piece.
to a fixture that we already
Exactly.
paid for. Yeah.
Exactly. In other words, I don't want to see us go out and pick something that can't be retrofitted with the pedestrian piece added to it at some point.
Yeah, there's whenever you have a project like that, there are things that are going to constrain what you can do. It's, what are the minimum light levels on Dundee Road? What fixture style will IDOT accept? What, if the grant has some sort of LED component to it that we wouldn't otherwise have available to us? And so it's, whenever you have a project like that, it's going to have some limitations on it, and I don't know what they are yet. So that's what I'm trying to find out is the grant itself going to decide, here are the 5 light fixtures, and you do what you can with that, or do you integrate it? Do you pick the one that's the most customizable? You know, so I don't know enough yet to be of much to be able to provide much better information than that. But the two first steps, well, 3, identifying the grant, getting the application in for it, and then setting up the requirements for the village budget and the Northwest Council of Mayors program, those are done.
Well, could you expound on the Northwest Council of Mayors program?
I can try.
They have a grant, apparently?
It is the Northwest Council of Mayors in this part of Chicagoland is tasked with overseeing a couple of different federal pass-throughs, one of which is the STP funds, and that is what this is. I'm certainly not the expert on this, but they have, there's a couple of different types of things. There's the motor vehicle, the motor fuel tax, there's the surface transportation. So there's a couple of different programs that come from different places. Some of them are based on the size of the municipality. Some are based on contributions from sales. So I don't know all that much about it other than to say that the Council of Mayors is oversees how that program is set up.
Okay.
Administered.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to get their approval because they have to weigh it against the total pot of money for this area and how that's going to be set up over the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
We could probably, if you have if I've either butchered that explanation, I'll find out from Public Works in the next couple of days. But if you want to know more about how it actually works, I'm sure we can find somebody who knows.
No,
more than
I think we're looking at the end result. How can we influence the design and make it appropriate for our village and what we intend to do in future areas?
The two best answers for that are don't take anybody else's money and don't do it on somebody else's street.
Okay. All right.
And the last comment that I would like to make, it again seems like we are asking staff to do a lot of stuff in order to prepare for these two projects and having them ready to go, whatever. And I'll just say that, the Streetscape Subcommittee met for a period of 3 months, 2 months, 4 months, August, September, October, November.
We didn't present till.
And, we had minimum staff involvement, but we, got some ideas. We prioritized some things. We had a lot of discussion. We threw a lot of stuff up on the wall. We threw a lot of it away. We kept some of the good things, kept some of the bad things, and, managed to then come up with something that, we brought to the commission. I don't see why the commission just can't get together and work on some things like a discussion of the comprehensive plan where we don't need a lot of staff involvement feeding us stuff, doing stuff, preparing stuff for us. We should be able to do some of this stuff ourselves, or at least come up with some things that we feel are important, and then lay that out to staff and say, maybe we want to talk about this area of the comprehensive plan first, or that area of the comprehensive plan, something like that. So that's my only comment. I think we could do a little bit more of the work effort ourselves rather than having to rely on staff to do it.
Terry, are you talking about the comprehensive plan as a full commission, or taking pieces of it and breaking the commission apart,
Personally, I don't like breaking the commission down into pieces, because then it seems like somebody is left out and you might not have had your opportunity to participate. And, even the stuff that the subcommittee came up with, I think Mike had some different ideas, valuable, constructive ideas that I think probably should have been discussed all along the way and just weren't, because we didn't have the value of his participation. So I would always vote for having all of us, maybe on a volunteer basis, to say, hey, we're going to talk about this, and, if you want to stay, you can. If you want to leave, you can.
It's still going to require staff to be present at our meeting. So I guess I'm.
Well, what staff did we have present
at our meetings.
Well, wouldn't we, I don't know, wouldn't that require us to have staff at the meeting? Or can we meet in a location without staff and continue to record it? So that we're, it's just recorded as,
And I don't mind if staff is here. All I'm saying is they don't have to plan what we're going to discuss, how we're going to discuss all the options. Maybe we can do some of that ourselves.
I guess I'm just thinking of the legality piece of it.
As long as
That's all.
we're here
I
on
don't know.
TV.
I don't know. How would that work? I mean, I'm certainly not opposed to doing that. I think that's a great idea to, do that with minimal staff involvement. But I'm just thinking in terms of, can we meet in a room somewhere in, in the village? And is that appropriate, and is that acceptable, and is it legal? That's all.
Yeah, I guess my comment was more to the standpoint of, it's 7:45. If we agreed to stay till 9 o'clock and we just wanted to go through the comprehensive plan, we've got it all on our thing tonight, and just talk about the 8 or 9 areas that are in the comprehensive plan and pick one that we thought was the most important to look at. We don't need staff to tell us, here are the areas, here's which ones we feel are more important. Yeah, if you're here and you can contribute to it, that's fine, but I don't think you have to go out and prepare something for us to review, items about the comprehensive plan.
I think what the consensus that I heard was do the first step, do the comprehensive plan overview as one of the priorities, bump it up the list, so that having done a review of the comprehensive plan, the commission can ask staff to prepare a discussion exactly like what you're saying is, once the commission sees the breadth of the plan and the various sections, have a discussion about, I think this is the next section of the plan, either by geography or by topic. Here's the next section of the plan, and then that becomes our project for workshop preparation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, I don't know that we're necessarily saying a very different thing. I think it's, let's look at it, set out from that discussion the next one. And I think that's kind of what I had suggested as the procedural. I wasn't hearing much of the interest in the let's read it on the spot and prepare it. I think it was more of a come to the next meeting and break it down. And we can certainly do that. I mean, if that's what the commission as a whole would like, we can take the plan, and our role in this can be to help package it. It is a massive, massive document to just sit down and read. And I think that our role in that is to help package it in such a way that you can determine as a group which element of it you'd like to look at next. What out of this plan is still valid? Because much of it is going to be valid. They're not things that I think you're going to find have any significant change in a 5 or 10 year period. Some of it's going to be obviously outdated and obviously in need of an update.
Commissioner Dorban.
I agree with that.
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Rafano.
I see that the auto parts store is open. And, we were talking about the.
I don't believe I think they're stocking their shelves.
Yeah, stocking
they're
their shelves. They looked open. Well, we talked about the brick, and they ended up for some, it was a while, and I wasn't in favor of it anyway, so I may have blocked it out of my mind, but they put a facade up on top, and I thought for some reason that was either going to be, I didn't think they were going to put that facade up there underneath the sign, but they did, and they did leave most of the bottom part brick, and they bricked it up, and it looks fine, it looks good, but, and the sign, actually, the monument sign doesn't, it's starting to shrink.
Yeah.
It doesn't look as large, and they've done a nice job of landscaping it. And Phillips 66.
The question in there is the facade.
Well,
It was a flexible approval. It allowed both things.
okay.
And I think, I have not talked to them, I'm guessing based on the way it looks now, that where the brick was after they peeled it off and where the brick is supposed to be on their approved elevation were not the same place. So while the brick may have been fine, it wasn't where they wanted brick. So I think they have ended up with, the brick that was not in particularly good shape. If you saw when it was taken off the upper level, that was where the panels were anyway.
Right.
I think they had to cover that. And then the lower part, windows were where brick was.
Right,
So I
yeah.
think just analyzing how it looks compared to what was approved, that is what I think happened. The sign, since you brought it up, we did complete our review on the sign. What we have suggested to the developer, the general contractor, is that the visibility concern on the sign is internal. All the street views are clear and open. It's an internal circulation. You probably recall that the Gaslight Shopping Center has a cross access where you loop around. If you're coming from Gaslight going west to get back to the other angled area of Gaslight's parking lot, it's difficult to see through the sign. It's made of brick. So during the construction review, we're going to have them put a stop sign there so that there's a stop, watch for cars from right, so that and we'll put a stop line down most likely. But the sign itself was built where it's supposed to be and in accordance with the code.
Okay.
I think it's largely a pain because the old sign was on 2 pylons and you didn't have that brick, obstruction of
That's-
visibility.
It looked big when it was all brick before they put the first sign up. Like I said, it seems to shrink it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Johnson,
I don't believe I have anything.
Commissioner Burns,
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
nothing?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I do have another question, if I may. Andrew, question for you. And let's just take an example that we allow a 100-square-foot monument sign for a site. I mean, the building is large enough, whatever, such that, or the property is large enough so that they can qualify for a 100-square-foot sign, which would be the maximum that we allow, correct? Do we have the ability to say, even though it's allowed, do we have the ability to say it should be smaller because maybe the signs that are on adjacent properties are of a smaller size or a different character? So the question is, even though it's allowed, can we recommend a smaller size?
You can approve a sign at a smaller size. You can approve it conditionally. Petitioner could say, could take that as a denial and appeal that aspect of the decision to the village board. Is this mic cutting in and out while I'm talking?
No.
The petitioner could appeal that decision if they disagree with it. Even though it's an approval, it's effectively denying what they've asked for. They could appeal it up to the board and ask for the full code allowance. The board could take a look at the approval and make a determination one way or the other. It could go to court after that, but you have the ability to view a sign as being proportionally out of character. The code could probably be modified to be a little clearer about how to address a situation like that. There are proportional considerations in a couple different areas of the code. I don't know if, off the top of my head, sign presence on a freestanding sign is one of those. But taking the example that was raised of the advanced auto sign, you have a situation where a sign that is smaller than the maximum allowed has a greater impact at the street level than other signs that are the maximum allowed. You take a look at that, try to determine why that is, and then perhaps the code needs to be adjusted to prevent that situation in the future, regardless of how the appeal process works. But there's a possibility that there's something in the code that is allowing a situation that you would not like to allow again.
Okay. I think you answered the question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We're adjourned.
I have the hardest time.